Hey friends, welcome back to the MSM Leaders Podcast. This is our third episode, and I hope you've checked out our first two, just kind of laying out a roadmap for where we're going to go, and the second one laying out vision and just kind of, the big pieces of what we want to be as a network and as a student ministries. But this third part today, I'm excited about because, believe it or not, I do not actually enjoy doing solo podcasts. It's too much of my own voice. It's just a lot. So I'm joined today by one of my most favorite people in the whole world, my wife. So Beth, how are you doing today?
Good.
Good. We had quite an ordeal getting here because it's snowing like 15 inches at time of recording in Billings, and so we got stuck in a Prius of all cars, believe it or not. And then we've got the other half of this dynamic duo in terms of who works at the office here. We have my admin, Christine Forrey. Christine, how are you?
Hello, I'm good.
Good. Well, we are excited today because the goal of this podcast is just kind of for you to meet the team. I know that sometimes in the church world, there can be just names and faces and roles that we might understand intellectually or know from a distance, but that's really not our MO here in Montana. We like to know and be known. There's a verse that guides me a lot that I think I even mentioned in the last podcast, but it comes out of 1 Thessalonians 2:8. And it says, because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. And this is a verse that I pray every day. This is a verse that I know that we as a team, and myself and my wife as a couple try and live out, is the gospel is not just about the transactional nature of ministry, right? It's not just, hey, can you help me run a camp, and then I'm going to help you run your youth ministry, your kids ministry. Like, it's not so transactional. Instead, it's just a matter of living our lives together. And so that's kind of the tone for this podcast. We're going to get into our individual stories, but first, I do want to just kind of hear from Beth and Christine. Any thoughts on that verse or how it shows up in your life?
Yeah, I think what was encouraging, we were talking right before this about how we're kind of nervous. I am kind of nervous
Sure.
about this. But then I just remembered, like, we're talking to our friends. And I think that this verse just kind of reveals that, like, these are people who are our friends, and we're just doing this together. And so the struggles that I have, I'm sure somebody else in our network has also dealt with, and vice versa. The strengths that I have, like, can also be built up by others. So yeah, I'm just excited to keep chatting with you guys.
Yeah, Beth is what we call podcast confident. It's my favorite thing. Christine, any thoughts from you?
Well, I just was thinking that, we do ministry to students, and we do ministry, obviously, to reach those that are unsaved, but we also do ministry between each other, and that's the people that God gives us first, those people that we're with every day, are a really important part of our ministry. So just remembering that we're each people and we minister to each other first, even, as we serve together.
Yeah, no, that's those are good thoughts. I really, I think I like this verse because it gives me a lot of grace for myself and for others because, like right now, Beth and I are in the 3 and 6 year old phase of life, and then Christine, you've got 6 and, 9, 13?
6, 9, 12.
6, 9, 12, that's what it is. But like there was the other day I was talking to somebody and they were just talking about how, right in the middle of whatever serious thing they were trying to do, their 3 or 4 year old just decided to be ridiculous. And I'm like, I deeply, deeply sympathize with that. There's plenty of camp photos of me like dragging my 3-year-old along as I'm trying to like orchestrate church camp. And it's just a hoot. And so it's fun to be able to look across the room and not just see distant faces and distant names, but to see people who are just living their lives, And so seeing as we're all in the same boat, I figured we would kind of the bulk of this podcast would just be us kind of sharing our stories. And this is not, I don't necessarily mean this to turn into like weepy church camp confessional. Like there's more to us than that, right? Like sometimes I think when Christians are asked to share their stories, they just focus on this like very intense testimony. And it's like, there's all these parts to us. What is it that you guys enjoy doing? What is, what's the journey of your life? What jobs have you done? What is the call of God, if that factors in? What is your testimony? If that, it's really a carte blanche here in your best 5 to 7 minute offense here, to use a sports term. What is your story? And so, Beth, we get to start with you. Introduce yourself to the listeners, I guess.
Yeah. So my name is Beth Epley, but my maiden name is Kilsdonk. So if you've been in the network for a while, you might recognize that name because my dad is also a pastor. But I was born and raised in Montana, grew up in Assemblies of God Church in Sydney, and that's really like the foundation of my faith began. At the time, my parents weren't pastors. They were just like faithful members of the church. My dad was on the board. We did all of the church things. JBQ, we did missionettes. We had commissionary kids as kids ministry.
What is commissionary kids?
That was like our own little elementary school outreach program. We did our puppet ministries.
Whoa.
We performed in the park.
Nice.
I actually didn't know that detail after 10 years of
Yeah.
marriage. This is so exciting.
Loretta Teal was my children's pastor. And that's really like the foundation of my faith was that being born and raised in the church. And then when I was in junior high, we moved down to Missouri so my dad could go to seminary. And we spent 4 years down in Springfield, Missouri. And then I moved back to Montana my junior year of high school, which was really hard in some ways to be like uprooted like right before graduation, all of those things, and had to kind of like start over in a small town. But what was really great is like I came in as like the pastor's daughter. And so some people like have expectations of what that is and who you are. But the nice thing was like I had already had 17 years of like foundational beliefs and development that like I didn't hold those things the same way that some PKs can end up feeling like that weight, and made great friends, and then ended up moving back to my hometown later and really loving Baker. But I went back to Missouri for college. I went to Evangel University, had a great experience there, got a degree in public administration and minors in international relations and English. So like none of the ministry things, but that whole time I was always active in ministry. Like I served on our staff for like our devotionals on our floor, and like teaching and being part of Christian education was always like within me, I think. And so even if I wasn't like in a quote unquote like ministry job, like I always had that going on. And that continued when I moved back to Baker after I graduated and started working in the oil field.
Beth is weirdly fascinated with the oil field.
I love it.
It's for, like, if Beth could put on a hard hat and walk out to the oil
man.
fields, she'd just be in hog heaven.
I mostly worked in the office, so they sometimes let me go out in my FRs, but it was great because I love that something from our tiny small town had like a global impact.
You would love that.
And I think that's very similar to like Christianity and what we do in our ministry with like these individual students and kids, like really has a not only a global impact but has an eternal impact. And I think that's really appealing, specifically in our kids and youth ministry. I just love how like something that seems small is never small in the hands of God. But I worked in the oil industry for a while, really enjoyed that, and then ended up moving down to New Mexico. And then Joe asked me to marry him, and so he said, "Do you want to move back?" And I was like, okay.
The answer deep down was no, because she had moved from the frozen north to the less frozen south. But
yeah,
she moved back.
But I did move back. I really like him. And then I continued on working in my secular job. I ended up being an economic development director for a nonprofit in southeastern Montana, and that was really cool because my whole job was to make the community where you live better. And it was a really nice dovetail with ministry. It ended up opening a lot of doors, and people knew who I was and my beliefs, and they would say, like, "Hey, can you pray for me about this?" Or they would just kind of open up about struggles that they were having just because they knew that I was married to a pastor and they had seen me working, and they just it opened really great doors for us to minister to the community and not just to our church. So that was really great. And then now we are here in Billings, and I am mostly home with our kids. But I also just started working for a Christian organization that helps refugees who have come to America, who are just brand new and have gone through a lot of the legal process to get here. And then they're just kind of dropped, and you're like, figure it out.
Yeah,
and
good luck. Hope you can speak the language.
So this is the whole mission is just to be like the hands and feet of Jesus in the lives of foreigners, because that's what the gospel requires us to do. So it's been really cool to also like continue on my own ministry in other ways. So those are some of the hallmarks of of the timeline in my life.
Nice. What are some of your favorite hobbies, and what's your favorite color, and why is it beige?
Gosh. The thing is, he's not joking. It really is.
My wife is a huge fan of taupes. I don't even know what taupes are.
I like neutrals. If you are wondering who is like the flashy out there one, it is not me in this relationship.
Yeah, one of us has worn a chicken costume like 6 times this last year, and the other one's Beth.
Yeah,
so it's just different energy.
We're a good balance. So.
But what do you like to do for fun, Beth?
I really like to read. I've read a lot of books the last couple of years, and that's been nice because I've just had more time to do that and kind of reignited that. Other things, I like to hang out and watch movies. I'm more of a homebody, but I do sometimes like to go out like with our friends from church. We have a nice little ladies group that sometimes we do things together. Go to Olive Garden and gorge ourselves on breadsticks. Eating's probably a hobby. Is that allowed?
I would say so. I would say eating's probably allowed.
And then if I am feeling ambitious, then sometimes I try to embroider like a grandma.
Man, that's a great segue, because I think that we've got other people on this podcast who share that I'm not going to call it grandma energy. I'm not going to call it,
it's grandma energy.
I'm going to go a little off script. I'm going to switch over to Christine now, our wonderful admin. Christine, talk to us about your story, some of your hobbies, some of where you've been and what you've done, how you got here, all those things.
Okay, well, I grew up in Maltby, Washington, which most people from Washington don't even know where Maltby is. Growing up, it had a gas station, an elementary school, a cafe that sells giant cinnamon rolls. So anybody that does know where Maltby is, they know it because of the Maltby Cafe and the giant cinnamon rolls.
That's a good thing to be known by.
Yeah, it is. And then there were 2 churches there. And when I was 2, my dad took an Assemblies of God church there in Maltby. It had been planted for like a year, I think. It was still pretty small, like less than 10 people meeting this mobile home. And there he stayed or I shouldn't say he, there we stayed. That's definitely a hallmark of my family and my parents. Like, my parents are partners in ministry and they do everything together. And I would say that us kids were also partners in that ministry and did everything with them, served in every area in every way. Like, when people say, like, I grew up in the church, like, I agree, you did. I, like, grew up in the church building. Yeah. Like, my elementary school was next door, and we walked to the church before and after school, and kids thought I lived there, and it was my really cool giant house. But, and like, other than sleeping, I did live there.
Yeah,
like,
no
it was
joke.
there all the time for everything. Yeah, so as I grew up, I was just involved serving in every area, basically, every event. And when I was a teenager, our youth pastor bought like an Adobe suite. I don't know what it was at that time,
there you
basically. And, you know, his computer was there in the evenings, and he kind of gave me permission, like, to make things in the evening for youth. So that's kind of where graphic design started, like making collages of events from pictures or pictures from events and like promo material and slides and stuff for Sunday. So that was kind of one area of ministry that I jumped into pretty early. And then the other one would be like worship stuff. And that one was a really big stretch for me, but I really appreciate my youth pastor at the time. He kept like pushing me and stretching me in that direction. And eventually it became something that I felt really, you know, comfortable in and confident in.
So I was going to say now, like, I would not have pegged you as somebody where it was difficult to step into, because you are very comfortable in that space and do very well, you know. And so it's surprising where I'm like, oh man, you had to drag you kicking and screaming into it.
No, they did. As a kid, I remember the first like solo that I was supposed to sing was in a Christmas thing, and my youth pastor's wife was organizing it or whatever, and she gave me this solo, and I was pretty reluctant about it, and I did it, and I was so proud. But then I find out like years later, nobody could hear anything that I sang because
Except
I was
the Lord
quiet.
Could hear it. Like, it's so good.
They could not get me to get close enough to the microphone or sing loud enough to actually produce any sound.
Gosh, that's so funny.
But yeah, that's kind of how that started. So anyways, I helped a lot with youth staff stuff, and then some point, everything kind of like went down with him, and he left the church, and I kind of stepped away from ministry for a little bit. I was kind of frustrated with him, if I'm really honest.
Yeah, that's fair.
And just kind of wanted to like step away for a little bit, and so I didn't do ministry stuff for probably about a year. And then we brought in a new youth pastor, and I wasn't in youth at this time. I was already graduated, but I really respected him a lot, and he did some great things with the students in the ministry, and really kind of like mentored me in a lot of ways. And so I thought, I think I could do this again. Like, I'd like to jump in and work in youth again. So I did that, and that's where I met Michael, because Michael, my husband, went to Northwest, and he applied for an internship under this youth pastor, and so he came to the church to intern, and that's where we met.
Man, what a story.
I
love that energy of just like, I'm interning for the youth pastor, and there it is,
Yeah, and we went on our first date in October, got engaged in January, and married the next October, so...
I feel that,
actually.
Ours was
Similar
like
timeline.
No, it was dating in December, engaged in May, married the following December.
Yeah.
It just was about a year.
Yeah. It's all you need.
That's all it takes. That's not real advice, just for the record. Like, this is a very case-by-case thing.
If the timing's right and the person's right, that's
true.
all you need.
That's true.
Yeah. So anyways, we continued in youth ministry. At some point, we started a young adult ministry. We kind of transitioned into college age, which was super fun, but it's a challenge. Like, working with young adults, they're all over the place. And so, but we did that for a long time. That was really fun. I did apply for my credentials during this period, did some global classes, and then officially became like worship pastor at the church. And then we had Silas, which we already talked about. I have got Silas, Nora, and Audra, 12, 9, and 6. And we did that for a while, even with young adults. But after a while, I was like, man, all I want to talk about is my baby. And you guys don't care at all that I have a baby. And so we kind of transitioned into doing like family life stuff. I started going to our MOPS group, and then eventually took leadership of the MOPS group, and that was really fun. We did tons of marriage retreats. It's probably one of my favorite things I've ever done in ministry is planning marriage retreats. It's just all the fun stuff with it. So we did a lot of that, and parenting classes, small groups, all that kind of stuff. So we did that for a long time. And then in February of 2020, I had kind of been feeling discontent for a little while, like just kind of, I wouldn't say unhappy, but just unsettled.
Sure.
And it was actually our Valentine's Day. We were in the car driving, and like, I was like, what do you think about moving?
Dang, just dropping the bomb.
And Michael was like, I don't think about moving. Like, I don't know
such good energy.
Where this is coming from. And, like I mentioned at the beginning, I mean, my family did ministry together, and my dad was at that church in Maltby for 34 years, something like that. And this sounds arrogant, but like in my mind, it was like, we can never leave. Like this church won't survive without us. Right. And that sounds so like wrong now, because of course God can use whoever he wants to use and do whatever he wants to do.
For clarity, Maltby is thriving still. It's doing great.
Exactly. But in my mind, like having been there my entire life, my identity wrapped up in this ministry and this church and this community and these people. It was like, man, I'm doing like so much stuff here. Who are they going to find to fill these gaps? It's hard to get someone just to serve coffee on a Sunday morning. Right. Who's going to take over all of these things? And so it really had never been even a thought in my mind that we could do something different. And I kind of surprised myself with that. And every conversation I had with people after that, they were just like shocked, like, really? Like, moving? Yeah. Are you thinking about this? So yeah, over the next couple years, we just kind of like dropped that conversation with family here and there, tried to be like really gentle. Like, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're doing, but I just feel like God has something different. I did want to mention, my dad and I were talking the other day, and I was thinking about this story, and he mentioned the idea of the difference between calling and assignment. And I think that was part of what I wrestled with at that time, was that, God had a call on my life to ministry and be involved in ministry. And I think I had gotten a little twisted with the idea that like the calling was so limited to like that place into what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that the calling is like a lifelong thing, right? God calls us to ministry or calls us to our profession or family or whatever it is. That's not like a temporary thing. It's a lifelong calling. I'm called. But what that calling looks like, the assignment itself changes, right, depending on the season of life.
Yeah, because you've walked through, I mean, just in your story now, it's been like 3 or 4 of them, just walking through that.
Yeah.
So
that was kind of the end of that assignment, and God brought us a new assignment and brought us here to Billings. That's kind of like, people ask me all the time how we ended up in Billings. It's basically, it ends up with, like, I had family here. And so we wanted to go
because now
somewhere
the
we had
entire,
support.
to be clear, you have 3 siblings, and the whole clan's basically migrated. And your dad currently is pastoring in Livingston with your mom. Like, it's just funny that the Forreys are, they were Pacific Northwest, and now it's like, bam, here in Montana, here's the whole clan.
Although it is the Breckies.
The Breckies. Sorry, my bad.
I'm a Forrey.
I got confused.
She's
a Breckie Forrey.
My bad.
Yeah. So now we're here, and I was not looking for a full-time job, but I saw the posting for this position, and oddly enough, like 3 people emailed it to me within like 24 hours.
That's amazing.
Like 3
I love
different
that.
people,
I don't think I knew that,
is
actually.
Funny. Yeah, and I honestly, my initial reaction was like, no, like I have a problem with disappointing people, so like resigning from positions is really difficult for me. So it was like, I don't want to let these people down. I don't want to leave them in a lurch for the part-time job I was doing before this. God was impressing it on my heart. Like, you need to do something about this. You need to take a step and move forward with this. And of course, Michael was totally fine with it. It wasn't an issue.
Go for it. Yeah.
It wasn't an issue.
Ministry.
Yeah. And now I'm here.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've been on staff with us now since late August, I think.
Yeah, August 26th.
So, nice. Well, yeah, no, this is great. And I hope that, listeners, I hope you're picking up on just the fact that, like, what I love about this concept of sharing our lives, sharing the gospel, is that, like, Christine's story, Beth's story, they've enriched me, shaped my leadership, my ministry, changed the way I perceive situations. They've just enriched my life and my ministry, and I hope that, like, that's the common experience we keep sharing and keep reiterating in student ministries, is that as we do this process, we all become better, not just better at ministry, but better as followers of Jesus. And so my story definitely begins. I did not grow up in church. I always joke that my story is kind of the beginning of a bad religious joke, where like my mom was raised Catholic and my dad was raised Jehovah's Witness, and somehow I ended up Pentecostal, and it's just a whole thing. But my mom, for sure, as a kid, I remember my mom really not wanting her kids to go to hell, and so she really did her best to introduce us to just the evangelical church. And then we kind of all my older siblings kind of stopped going to church one by one. But when I was in middle school, I was a really awkward kid, which should not surprise anybody. But I was like the awkward kid. Like, some people are like, I hated middle school. I was like, no, it was the worst 2 years I can remember of my 32-year life. And it was. I was depressed. I was taking multiple medications and just dealing with a lot of different things, and like got made fun of a lot, got bullied at school, got bullied by my brothers, got yelled at by my dad a lot. I mean, it's just and to be clear, disclaimer, very loving family. Like, love my brothers, love my dad. Just was a weird coalescence of things, And but in the middle of this really, really down kind of season in my, young 8th grade life, my sister was still attending an Assembly of God church here in Billings, and my best friend at the time was attending the same youth group. And so they were just like, hey, you should go. My mom said, hey, you should go. And so I ended up going to this youth group, and man, just like got saved, like every week for the next 6-8 weeks. Like, it was as if the world just became right suddenly. They talk about dramatic conversions, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, why don't people know more about this, And then I got saved at every youth camp and every youth conference. I just was so pumped. And so it was about a year after that, I was still struggling with a lot of things that, young men may struggle with, whether it's internet addiction or different things like that. And I remember coming to church camp, and as a very defiant post-freshman in high school, I remember threatening God, probably out of desperation, but I went to church camp, and I basically had been trying to free myself from some of these hang-ups and these sins and things that had just clung to my life even after being saved. And I threatened the Lord, and I said, hey, if you can't set me free at church camp of all places, like, what am I even doing this for? Like, I'm not going to serve a God who doesn't have the power to do anything. And of course, looking back now, I'm like, what a bold play, little Joe. Like, that's a move. Great job. But the Lord does answer. He answered the sincere desperation of my heart, and not only set me free from some of the sins in my life, but called me into ministry, and specifically had called me into youth ministry. And I remember thinking, like, I want to spend my life pouring into people who were trapped just the way I was. And now when I look back, because Beth and I have talked about this a lot, where like your youth group experience, like your youth pastor obviously meant something to you, as youth pastors do, but I would say foundationally, you were probably leaning more on your family, your upbringing like that
absolutely.
to process your faith. Whereas like for me, my whole life was like, man, the power of a good youth pastor like can change the world. And like I was just so excited about that. And so then I moved to Baker, married the pastor's daughter, spent 10 years doing youth ministry there at a youth center. The church had this old 7-Eleven, and we just got to hang out with students all weekend, every weekend, do all sorts of antics, and it was a good time. But after that, the network approached me and said, hey, we'd like to consider you for the role of student ministries director. And so we jumped into that prayerfully, and obviously that's how God rolled with that. And so, but it's been fun. The last almost 2 years now, it's been like a really fun ride. And this podcast is kind of just a starting point of what we hope to do over the next several years. Is just to resource leaders and to do ministry alongside friends. And my hobbies include a lot of board games. I really love board games, probably to a fault, which I mostly blame my brother-in-law for, but I really love just strategy games and games that take an hour and games that take 6 hours. It's just a hoot. I think I've grown to love the hobby that we would label as DIY, which is basically where my wife has a bunch of ideas and then I build things in our house forever. But it's at time of recording, I think I'm halfway through like coating our entire kitchen in some wood and different things, and it's just ridiculous and fine. But anyways, but yeah, so that's as Beth and I both kind of already mentioned, we have 2 daughters. Elodie is 6 at time of recording. Eleanor is 3. And they're the best. They're weird in the best way that kids are weird. They have all the quirks and the funny things they say.
They're so funny.
But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. But to kind of wrap up the podcast, I do want to ask this question just to kind of give people an insight. First, actually, I would say my challenge to every listener is what we're trying to do here on this podcast. It's not just that I want you to know me or know my wife or know my admin, but it's I want you to make this process happen with other people as well. Like, to be part of Montana Student Ministries is to commit to knowing and being known. And so maybe for you, it's reaching out to a youth or kids pastor in your town, or maybe it's, kind of spreading. Obviously, Montana's a huge state, but we have called it often a small town with long streets. And so really there is the potential at all times for you to find friends and camaraderie and relationship, but it does take something. It does take us reaching out and kind of being willing to be vulnerable. And so we hope that us leading the way in that kind of encourages you. But my last question for Beth and Christine, and then I'll give my thoughts, is what is it about kind of being involved in MSM? Because really, we are all, obviously, Christine and I have very formalized roles, as she is, employed by the network and is my admin, I'm the DYD. But Beth jumps in all different ways, and you really, there's no way to not do this job as a couple in a sense. Like, it involves our whole lives. And so, what is your favorite thing about being involved in Montana Student Ministries?
My favorite thing is camp.
It's just,
and
yeah,
I'm a camp kid at heart.
That's true.
I grew up going to Eastern Montana Bible Camp, and then obviously to Glacier Bible Camp. Even when we moved to Missouri, we would come back every summer for camp specifically. And so I think I've been to 20 plus years of Glacier Bible Camp. But I love it I love all of it. I love that the moments that you have at camp can be catalysts for such incredible growth in students' lives. I love that I get to see everybody, and I don't get to see everybody all the time, and so this is we're all here and we're having fun. I also like that it's the most structured time of my life, and
Sure.
I like structure, and currently I don't have as much in my day-to-day, but with camp, I know what the rhythm is, and I love that I get to work with our interns. They have just been the best kids the last 2 years. So all things camp have been so fun for me to get to be a part of as an adult, and to continue that on, and to see the moments that I had and the relationships that I formed as a student continue on. Yeah, I just think that camp is my favorite thing, and I look forward to it all year. And I know it's the most trying for everybody else, but I'm woohoo, we're here. Sorry, Joe, you don't get to see it.
I don't know
but
if
I'm so
everybody
excited.
else, but Beth and I definitely joke because camp is obviously camp is this apex, this epitome of what we do, and it's one of our best events and favorite events. And I can reflect on all of that, and it brings me deep joy. But yeah, camp's a lot of planning.
Yeah.
As we're sitting in my office in January, I've got my whiteboard just filled up with names of people where I'm like, okay, I got to call them and it's just like, it's almost like I have like a pyramid scheme. Like I'm your friend from high school who's like, hey, do you want to come help me do this? Like every summer, I feel like I'm just recruiting my friends to be part. But it's for the Lord, so like it matters. You know, like it's way better than just whatever things we're selling for a pyramid scheme. But anyways, Christine, what about you? What's your favorite part of being part of Montana Student Ministries?
Well, I'm still pretty new to this job. It's only been a few months. I have not been through a camp season, so I can't really say that's my favorite yet. Maybe it will be. We'll see. Obviously, I was a part of youth conference, but I think I'm just mostly excited for like this new adventure, for my life and for Montana Student Ministries, and just kind of to see what God, like I mentioned earlier, like this new assignment, like what does it look like? What does God have in store? Like it's different, but that doesn't mean it's like better or worse. But it's new and fresh, and I love change. I love something new. And I've done tons of youth ministry, but I am in a very different place in my life than I was last time I was working in youth ministry. Like I didn't have any kids. I was just like
now you're a youth
newlywed
parent.
And now I'm a parent of a teenager. Kind of. And so that
kind of.
He's 12. I don't know.
Silas,
We're
I was like kind of.
He is. But that's a totally different perspective too, I think, than what I had when I was younger doing youth ministry. So I'm hoping that, I can bring a different experience than I had previously. And I mean, this job, like practically, it's all the things that I like to do, really. I mean, and it's all the things that I've been doing my whole life.
Which
and
is
so
great.
the things I feel good about, I feel comfortable about, I enjoy doing, from the admin to the creative, everything in between. I'm enjoying it. So, yeah.
Nice. I think for me, and this is going to sound so cliche on a leaders podcast, but my favorite thing is all of you guys, all the leaders of Montana that I get to invest in.
Aww,
so yeah, it is. It's very feel good, but it's true. I mean, from everything from when we organize our budget, you can see that the bulk of my priority comes in connecting with and equipping leaders. There was a shift that happened several years ago, because up until about maybe 6 or 7 years. I was in Baker almost 10 years, but maybe at the 6 or 7 year mark, I was at a church camp and I was in a service. And up until this point, just because of the way I expressed my passion for the call of God, I remember thinking there's just nothing better. There's nothing that brings me deeper joy than like seeing a student encounter Jesus. And then I had one of my leaders come up to me kind of in a panic in the middle of a service, and they had just been confronted with a hard prayer situation. And I just like walked with them through that. And I walked with my leader through this. I said, well, hey, here's how we calm ourselves down. And here's how we pray into life of the student. Here's how and like that leader got to go back, have a powerful moment with a student. Mm-hmm. And it was almost as if I unlocked like a deeper joy. Like suddenly I was like, oh, this is like, students are cool. Like that's why we exist, is to like have these moments. But I could tell God shifting something in my own heart where I was like, what brings me deeper joy is to be like a facilitator of helping other people reach in and care about students. And so I just am thrilled to be on this journey with you guys. As I mentioned, I really hope that you take the message of this podcast to heart, is that in my opinion, there's always more risk associated with living ministry kind of heart first, or heart on your sleeve in a sense, to be exposed and vulnerable in that way, to try and branch out and make friends, especially if you're new to the network. But there's no other right way to do it, in my opinion. Like you could get hurt, but like that's the gig. Like Jesus was never an arm length kind of guy. He was incarnational. He lived in life. And so I just hope that you guys are encouraged and challenged to kind of walk this journey with us. We hope that you know us a little better. Christine and Beth, thanks for being on the podcast today. That was fun.
Yeah.
Not too bad, right? Nothing too terrible.
That's right. We survived.
I'm sad we didn't catch on recording our delightful conversation about sweaters and knitting and different things that represent Beth and Christine's shared hobbies. For two women in their 30s, it's very grandma-ish, but it's fine. It's fine. So
neither of us knit, for the record.
Well, what is it? It's embroidery.
That's true.
Embroidery.
Yeah.
Crocheting? No, it's not crocheting. It's embroidery. Okay.
Embroidery.
There you go.
Well, anyways, thanks for tuning into the podcast today. You can definitely find this podcast anywhere podcasts can be found, I'm pretty sure. And please do us a favor, make sure people know about it, and I hope that it helps you. We're looking forward to our next series, which is going to be kind of we're just titling it the Why series, and that'll be releasing over the next several months. And it's just, why do we do all our various events? Whether you're new to the network or you've been here a while, I just want you to have a grasp of why we do what we do, what programs are available to you, so that you have an easy on-ramp for that. But for now, thanks for tuning in to the MSM Leaders Podcast.